to the outlet. We are here with episode 11, and we will be discussing some of the U.S. intelligence community and some of the past issues with it. I'm Mac.
I'm Drew. Yeah, we're talking about the big question is should we trust the United States intelligence community? There's a lot of talk about them being credible when you listen to the mainstream media, but if you listen to what might be considered alternative media, you hear a different story. Maybe they're not so credible. So what is the intelligence community? Who are we talking about? We're talking about the CIA, the NSA, the FBI, government entities like this. So we're just going to kind of bullet point some things that they've done in our recent history to shed some light. Maybe some things you haven't heard about before, or if you have, maybe you'll hear something you haven't heard before about those subjects. So I think an awesome place to start is Operation Northwoods. That's one that really tips people's trigger, really starts to piss people off about government. And that's something people look into and say, wow, I'm kind of losing trust. Maybe, do these people really have my best interests at heart? So
it makes you realize that there's different factions within our government, and we're dependent on some of those factions to protect us from some of the more nefarious factions.
Mm-hmm.
We're dependent on a lot of good people in the intelligence community to keep us protected, to make sure it's helping the people and not just invading us.
Yes, definitely, man. That goes for whether we're talking about Northwoods or even like the Edward Snowden controversy with the NSA. There's somebody who's a whistleblower within an organization that is admitted to warrantlessly wiretapping people. So there are definitely different factions, and part of the reason why a lot of these entities can't be trusted, or an argument somebody would use to say you can't trust them, is because of things like compartmentalization of information. While they champion the name intelligence community, not everyone in the organization is intelligent about what's going on. No one really knows the full picture. People just know compartmentalized bits of information, and when you put it all together, it serves a purpose which they might not grasp. So it's kind of counterintuitive, but
yeah.
And we've I don't know, do you have anything you want to add, like specifically on Northwoods, or?
Oh, definitely. I think that's a good one to start with, especially because the outcome of it was we did have a faction of our government who said, no, we're not going to go through with these plans because it's so dishonest and disgraceful. And that was actually the president at the time, JFK, who said, no, we're not going to do this. Because Operation Northwoods was a plan to make Cuba look like our royal enemy, so that we'd have to, we could take out Castro there, which in some way, it makes you question the whole thing, because in some ways, obviously, Fidel Castro, it was an evil dictator. I think the record's pretty clear there. And, well, if that was the case, why couldn't we just go, why do we need an excuse to invade there? Why couldn't we just go ahead and say, hey, you're a bad guy, you're just off our coast, we're going to take you out?
Mm-hmm.
Instead, this Operation Northwoods had all these elaborate plans, false flag events, in which we were going to blow up boats, our own boats and planes, to make it look like Castro was attacking us.
Right.
So then we go in and take him out. The question becomes, well, what's the point of all that? Couldn't we have just taken him out? And then you had the whole Bay of Pigs invasion after that, which was a whole debacle. And I guess to this day, we're not even exactly clear on what happened. The official narrative is there was this big invasion of Cuba, and once again, President Kennedy said, no, I'm not going to support it, and it failed miserably.
Right.
So Northwoods is an extremely complicated example of kind of what we're showing here, where there's a lot of different factions fighting for power in the intelligence community.
Definitely, it's not very cut and dry. It's hard to say the CIA is bad or FBI is bad. I mean, there are people within those organizations that do have the people's interests at heart. But yeah, the big dirty word there used against people questioning the state's official narrative or their motives or whatever is false flag. That's really the root of all of these. I guess the root of all the distrust, at least in my mind. And just like Northwoods, like take the Gulf of Tonkin incident, for example, the excuse that we used to go into the Vietnam War, which has, since recently been discovered that it was a total false flag and completely untrue. We actually had a ship dressed up like a Vietnamese ship attack one of our own ships on purpose. It was a total dog and pony show. And that was the excuse that they were trying. They wanted to go to war. They would, by any means necessary. So by telling the public they were being attacked, and that's happened more often. That people don't realize how often that has happened.
There's many historical examples, and probably going back thousands of years of such events to rile up the populace to go to war.
Yeah. Yes, there was a similar incident that happened with Israel too. I can't remember the name of that ship.
You talking about recently the USS Cole?
I don't think it was the Cole. Either way, that's happened multiple times. False flag attacks on ships in the ocean. But that's all. Who orchestrates those types of attacks, and who administers the official narrative story? Who administers the information? The CIA. That's who's involved in that. Is it the whole CIA? Probably not, but enough of them.
It's interesting because a lot of times they don't even need these backstories to get us into war. Like recently with the example of Iraq, we just decided without good information that they may have weapons of mass destruction, so we went and invaded their country.
And, you took the words right out of my mouth.
And that wasn't even... I don't know if that was even the intelligence community or it was just the top of the White House that kind of made those unanimous decisions, with which the populace was not very happy with in America a few years later.
Definitely. And another type of false flag that the intelligence community is involved in that's ongoing is their involvement in pushing drugs. I think Gary Webb's book, Dark Alliance, chronicles the CIA's involvement in the crack cocaine explosion.
Yeah.
And it's very damning. I think I just saw an article recently. I can't remember where I saw it, but there's been somebody in the CIA has admitted that they were working directly with Pablo Escobar and that they actually took him out.
Yeah.
When he was started to derail and not play by their rules.
And it's interesting because it appears that most operations within the CIA are not nearly as nefarious as dealing drugs or something like that. But it seems to be, throughout history, there's a few of these rare examples in which they get caught, that a small faction gets caught dealing drugs or something like that. And that, Iran-Contra is obviously part of the cocaine dealing that the CIA was involved with. That's all been declassified at this point. It's not... There's not really much debate there.
We touched on WMDs. When right before Donald Trump was elected, and then the period between November 8th and January 20th, we kept hearing from mainstream news that the CIA has evidence that the Russians helped Trump win the election, that they meddled with the election. That's the kind of information that media is telling us is coming from the CIA. But is the CIA totally forgetting that Hillary Clinton sold millions of dollars of uranium to Russia? It's like there's not even an acknowledgement of that.
If there was Russian hacking and there was evidence of it, then why is Trump now our sitting president? This should have all been dealt with while Obama was still in charge, or it should be coming out right now before we have a Russian agent in the White House. I mean, it seems ridiculous that our intelligence community, with how advanced they are, could have failed that bad to a lesser enemy like Russia being able to take over our presidency, that would be an epic failure of the intelligence community, wouldn't it?
Exactly. Exactly. Um, yeah, if you want to go even off the deep end even more, talk about an epic failure of the intelligence community was 9/11. They had all of the information to anticipate the attack, not to mention Osama bin Laden working for the CIA many, many years before this even happened. Um, so,
Yeah, it makes you wonder if some of this compartmentalization it's too compartmentalized. I mean, I understand that with secret defense proceedings, you can't let all your employees know everything because of security concerns. But at the same time, as compartmentalized as it is, it seems that sometimes one agency can't, one group can't get information that they need to be able to stop an event like 9/11. Because it seems like there were warning signs of such events, for sure.
Definitely. Excuse me. There's a lot of. Excuse me. There's a lot of. I guess our coverage of this topic is a little bit biased because neither of us really trust the intelligence community. I'd say just from a general standpoint. But another good place to look for examples of why not to trust them is John Perkins' book Confessions of an Economic Hitman, where as a contractor directly under the employment of the intelligence community, this guy goes into foreign countries and extends them lines of credit to rebuild infrastructure and to bolster their cities, and a line of credit knowing that these people are not going to be able to pay it back through any means. So when they come calling for the debt to be repaid and they can't pay it, they just say, well, we're going to, and since you can't pay, we're going to, install a base here and bring our contractors in, and we're going to start take your natural resources as payment. And that's a way for the CIA to covertly basically buy countries, buy their natural resources for pennies on the dollar, and through other subversive means to install their own puppet dictators.
Yeah,
and that's just Africa and the Middle East and all over.
Just looking into
and that's all headed by the intelligence community.
Yeah, sure. And the CIA seems to be one of the more nefarious branches of the intelligence community, as it seems like usually the more defense-oriented ones are more concerned with military applications, which have to go through the chain of commands of up to the president. But where it seems a lot of these CIA-run projects, or something like Iran-Contra, you had Ronald Reagan come out and say, I didn't even know about this. Or, in the past, you had Kennedy say, I didn't know about this. Whether or not they're lying, I don't know, but it seems that the CIA can subvert the three branches of government, the whole, how no one should have too much power. And the CIA was, it was started, well, and its precursor was started at the end of World War II, the OSS. And you had an international lawyer who founded it, Dulles, and it seems that it was a lot of its reason for being founded was to do international business for American businesses. It was like to facilitate international business. So that seems to be the main goal of the CIA throughout the years, is as a facilitator of business, that and to help surveillance of our so-called enemies.
Right.
And, the CIA is only supposed to operate in foreign matters. They're not supposed to be able to investigate someone who has no foreign ties.
Yeah, not supposed to.
Yeah, those lines seem to get crossed quite a bit. But yeah, just looking into all the CIA operations just that have been declassified, and you make your head spin what we've been involved with, and it does seem like that at times the CIA does subvert the will of our elected government.
Definitely. I think it goes to show too that there's another a group motivated differently than our so-called elected leaders. And there's maybe a group that holds more power than the people who are actually
A group
in
of
office.
international businessmen.
Yes, and they might even be subverting people in the intelligence agency or blackmailing them.
That's definitely possible.
It gets a little bit more, conspiratorial, and he said, she said when you start talking about that, because people tend to disappear if they expose connections like that.
And this is where, in an ideal world, you have good people who stand up for the U.S. populace in these intelligence communities and don't let these conspiracies exist. And
exactly,
and they stand up. And if it gets bad enough, some of them have in the past have blown the whistle with devastating effects for both sides when that's done.
Mm-hmm. And I'm sure a lot of these people in the intelligence community are extremely frustrated because when they come out with, I'm sure they feel slighted when I'm sure a lot of these people see what's going on, and they can't really talk about it. Their intelligence serves a purpose that is contrary to the will of the American people.
And we definitely saw that with the NSA recently under Bush.
Mm-hmm.
You had a lot of people who tried to go through the proper channels within the NSA to stop the unwarranted surveillance of every American, and they failed. They tried and they failed, and
mm-hmm.
It wasn't, it led to someone like Edward Snowden releasing a ton of data that obviously the NSA did not want that data released.
And that's really what it boils down to. People like Edward Snowden and Julian Assange don't exist when you don't have an intelligence community that operates on this idea of secrecy. That's where all the conflicts of interest come in my opinion. It's the fact that they remain so secret that that's like an avenue for somebody to subvert the law. The idea that it remains top secret, or this is a secret program. I only imagine, like, if the American people were all to be sent a federal government profit and loss report of the intelligence communities and how much money they spend each year on everything, I don't think that they would exist. I think that people would start rioting if they saw exactly where all the money was going from their taxes, or where they got their money from, or the foreign governments that bought people. If they had a profit and loss report from the state, all these places would just disappear because people wouldn't stand for it. But since it's secret and people don't really look into it, they just assume, the intelligence, it's the government. The government has our best interests at heart, right? We vote for our leaders, right? Because we can replace them, right? So I think that is a fallacy of reasoning, and look for no better source than Gary Webb, his book Dark Alliance, and John Perkins in his book Confessions of an Economic Hitman. If there's anything that will convince you of that, it's those two books. They're pretty damning.
Yeah, and we've even had some senators recently attempt to see where some of that money is going, and they didn't get very far.
No, you won't.
Okay, well, I think this will conclude this short discussion. Hope you all enjoyed that.
Good talk.
All right, signing off.
See ya.